Hello, my name is Mathew Henderson, and I'm a PhD candidate in the Wild Minds Lab at the University of St. Andrews. Today, I'll be doing a reading of one of our papers titled Primate Origins of Discourse-Managing Gestures, the Case of Hand Fling. This work was co-authored by Patel-Grosz, myself, Patrick Rose, Kirsty Graham, and Catherine Hobater, and was published in Linguistics Vanguard in 2023. To keep this reading concise and listener-friendly, I'll be omitting some parts of the text, but links to the full paper, including its references, tables, figures, and supplementary materials, are available below or on our lab's website at www.wildminds.ac.uk. So with that, let's dive in. Primate Origins of Discourse-Managing Gestures, the Case of Hand Fling. Abstract. The last decades have seen major advancements in the study of gestures both in humans and non-human primates. In this paper, we seriously examine the idea that there may be gestural form types that are shared across great ape species, including humans, which may underlie gestural universals, both in form and meaning. We focus on one case study, the hand fling gesture common to chimpanzees and humans, and provide a semantic analysis of this gesture. Section 1. Introduction. One of the perennial questions in linguistic description and analysis is whether there are universals of an explanatory sort. This question has recently gained new prominence in research on human gestures, as discussed in Cooperrider et al. 2018 and Cooperrider 2019. Relatedly, research on gestures in non-human primates has focused on the question of whether there are gestural form types, or even gestural meanings, that are shared across great ape species. Finally, when it comes to the issue of meaning more broadly, as studied in natural language semantics, the question of abstract semantic universals that may be shared by all humans has been raised repeatedly, as in May 1991, Partey 1992, and Van Vintel and Mathew 2008. We propose a combined approach, which investigates universals in human gestures, great ape gestures, and semantics. We build on the recent work on great ape gestures in Byrne et al. 2017 and Byrne and Cochet 2017, among others, who use comparative evidence across great apes. For instance, non-human great apes, chimpanzees, bonobos, gorillas, and orangutans, appear to share more gestural form types, such as arm raise and reach palm, than would be expected by chance, suggesting a shared origin of gesture in apes. Qualities of this inherited system may have facilitated the emergence of language. Moreover, Graham et al. 2018 show that chimpanzees and bonobos also share the meanings of their gestures at a level above chance, indicating that such meanings may either be innate as well, or may arise across species, based on shared cognitive needs and capacities. Humans share common ancestors with non-human great apes, and are in fact a closer relative to chimpanzees and bonobos than the gorillas and other great apes with whom chimpanzees share a larger proportion of their repertoire. As a result, these findings give rise to the expectation that the form types and meanings of shared great ape gestures are also present, and potentially innate, in humans. Kurskin et al. 2019 demonstrate that the gestural form types shared by non-human apes are also found in the spontaneous gestures of 1 to 2-year-old human toddlers. These findings give rise to the following two questions. Are the shared gestural form types also found in adults? If so, what are their meanings, and how do they overlap with the meanings found in non-human great apes? We experimentally investigated these questions in Henderson et al. 2022. Henderson et al. 2022 is an experimental study that tests the extent to which core aspects of ape gesture meanings are retained and recognized when they are reproduced in human interactions. It did so by allowing participants to watch videos of these gestures reproduced in naturalistic human interaction, and then select from among 4 potential meanings. However, Henderson et al. 2022 does not explore the linguistic implications at length. The purpose of this article is to go beyond Henderson et al. 2022, taking matters one step further. We lay out a conceptual framework for linking shared ape gestures to discourse-managing meanings in humans, proposing a concrete formalization of how gestures follow a complete transition from the communication of non-human primates via correspondingly concrete gesture of humans to the abstract discourse-managing gestures of humans. To do so, we proceed as follows. We focus on the hand fling form type. Hand fling is shared between humans and all of the non-human great ape species, and may thus be a candidate for a gestural universal. In terms of its meaning, humans attribute the same physical move-away interpretation of this hand fling gesture that is present in other great apes, but also a more abstract discourse-managing meaning along the lines of forget it. We briefly summarize the findings of Henderson et al. 2022 in Section 2, and then analyze a naturalistic use of hand fling as a discourse-managing gesture in Section 3. We argue that both interpretations share an abstract core meaning, Section 4. This overlap may derive from a shared abstract semantic building block, which in turn is a candidate for abstract semantic universal in humans, Section 5, since gestures predate language even within the human lineage. This paper systematically builds on the extensive literature on how abstract gestures are based in gestures with concrete meanings, and on the rapidly growing literature on great ape gestures. Owing to both research traditions, it aims to make a contribution to both of them and to the connection between them by adding formal semantic methodology with a focus on the form-meaning pairings associated with the hand fling gesture. Formal semantic approaches to animal communication constitute a new field of research, and this paper aims to expand the scope of the field to comparison of great ape gestures and human gestures. Section 2. From chimpanzees to humans. In their research on chimpanzee gestures, Hobater and Byrne, 2011, define gesture as discrete, mechanically ineffective physical movements of the body observed during periods of intentional communication. Compare with Kendon, 2004, Abner et al. 2015, among many others, for definitions of gesture in humans. There is a general question of how to determine the meaning of a given gesture both in humans and in other species. A human who gestures will often be hard-pressed to describe the meaning of a gesture in words. See, for example, the abstract gestural meanings in Bressum and Mueller, 2017, which amount to different types of negative assessment. This issue is amplified by the study of non-human primates. Since human researchers cannot assess intuitions about gestural meanings, they can only observe in which context the gestures seem to be appropriate. In their study of wild chimpanzees, Hobater and Byrne, 2014, cataloged 39 uses of a hand fling gesture observed in 5 individuals, for which they assigned the primary meaning, move away, 73% of observations, and a secondary meaning of stop that, in 27% of observations. These researchers defined meaning here using a gesture's apparently satisfactory outcome, which is established as follows. In non-human great apes, we observed that a gestural signaler, defined as the individual gesturing, produces and may repeat a gesture until the recipient, for whom the gesture is intended, responds in a way that appears to satisfy the signaler. The behavior that made the signaler stop gesturing is classified as the gesture's apparently satisfactory outcome. The hand fling form is defined as a rapid movement of hands or arms from the signaler towards the recipient, in Byrne et al. 2017, while the move away meaning is defined as a prompt for the recipient to move away from the signaler, Hobater and Byrne, 2014. Hand fling is present in all non-human great ape species, chimpanzees, bonobos, gorillas, and orangutans. Building on Kurskin et al. 2019's findings that humans and other great apes overlap extensively in their gestural repertoire, our first question is whether the same hand fling can also be used as a human gesture with comparable meaning. Since the move away meaning is strongly associated with hand fling in chimpanzees, we ask if humans make the same connection, i.e., would a human onlooker also associate a hand fling gesture performed by another human with a move away meaning? While a stop that meaning also has been attested for hand fling, the fact that move away is attested in more than 70% of occurrences is taken to indicate that hand fling is a tight gesture, strongly associated with the move away meaning. Hobater and Byrne, 2014. Notably, since the gestures of non-human great apes are much more constrained in creativity than the gestures of humans, the optimal test scenario is one in which a human signaler performs the chimpanzee gesture as if it was a human gesture. Figure 1 is an illustration from a study presented in Henderson et al. 2022 that aimed to do this very thing. Here, chimpanzee specialist Dr. Catherine Hobater is depicted performing a hand fling gesture that adheres to its definition in chimpanzees, but is performed as if it were a human gesture. Hobater aimed to reproduce the atypical components of the gesture, e.g. the finger flexion and the wrist position typical for chimpanzee hands, to ensure that the gesture is faithful to what is found in chimpanzees, rather than anthropomorphized to maximize similarity. Note that while human and chimpanzee vocal anatomy is markedly different, the physiology of human and chimpanzees in the limbs required for gesture production is not. So while the authentic reproduction of vocal signals would not be possible across species, it is possible to recreate ape gesture actions. By reproducing the chimpanzee hand fling gesture as if it were a human gesture, it is possible to test whether human onlookers draw the same meaning inference that is found in chimpanzees, namely a prompt for the recipient to move away. This was indeed confirmed by our first experimental study, reported in Henderson et al. 2022, where 77% of the 300 participants chose move away as the meaning of hand fling in a forced choice task with 4 options. For the purposes of our study of human gestures that are isomorphic to chimpanzee gestures, this finding suggests that adult humans draw similar inferences from seeing such a gesture as it is found in chimpanzees. Naturally, the source of the move away inference is unclear, i.e., whether the form meaning association is innate or simply acquired systematically due to shared cognitive mechanisms, which may also involve iconicity in the form of resemblance between the gesture and an actual activity of shooing away a person or animal. Either way, we expect the form meaning association to be a candidate for a gestural universal, though possibly at an abstract level, which we discuss more in Section 5. Moreover, the question of whether iconicity plays a role in the gestural form meaning association is independent from Kurskin et al. 2019's finding that the form of hand fling gesture is found in 1 to 2-year-old human infants. These infants will plausibly not have access to the same iconic resources as human adults. In the next step, we observed the following. While gestures of the type in Figure 1 appear to be used exclusively to communicate about the external world by a non-human great apes, i.e., remove yourself physically, humans may assign additional meanings to such a gesture in addition to that physical meaning. We propose that an abstract discursive counterpart of remove yourself may amount to remove the undesirable information that you have pro-offered. We propose that an abstract discursive counterpart of remove yourself may amount to remove the undesirable information that you have proffered, or more casually, forget it, or even nah. In a second experimental study, we use the same forced choice design with 4 answer options, but tested abstract discourse-managing meanings instead of the concrete chimpanzee meanings. We found that human participants can indeed infer a forget it meaning for the same gesture in Figure 1. Forget it was chosen by 95% of the 300 participants. While bearing in mind that Figure 1 is the controlled recreation of a chimpanzee gesture by a human signaler, rather than a spontaneous gesture performed as part of a realistic conversation, an inspection of the literature on gestures in humans reveals similarities to the brushing away and holding away gestures that Bressum and Mueller, 2014 and 2017, discuss as part of their family of away gestures, building on Kendon, 2004, Calbris, 2011, and see also Harrison, 2010. They describe brushing away as a gesture that resembles rapidly brushing away small, annoying objects, while holding away resembles holding or pushing away an object. Bressum and Mueller, 2017. This is an important connection, as it substantiates the intuition that hand fling constitutes a universal gesture type and that such away gestures have been found in a range of different languages and cultures. Note that in chimpanzees, the flinging motion of hand fling, an outward hand movement away from the body, is more important to the gesture's definition than the final position of the hand. Bressum and Mueller, 2014, discuss such a movement, which they take to define their family of away gestures and connect it to rejection, refusal, negative assessment, and negation. We will now outline the discourse-managing potential of hand fling in Section 3, and then return to a potential abstract core meaning in Section 4. At this point, it is worth noting that there seems to be cross-cultural variation in the perception of hand fling. Native speakers of British, Canadian, and American English report that hand fling as a discourse-managing gesture is quite rude, whereas native speakers of German find the gesture quite natural without a similar sense of rudeness, but our discussion glosses over such differences. Section 3. Charting the discourse effects of hand fling. If we start by turning to the established formal semantics literature on discourse management, one concept that connects to the forget it meaning of a hand fling gesture is the notion of common ground management in Krifka, 2008. The core idea is that we not only communicate to establish shared knowledge about a world/situation, but we also communicate about how the discourse situation between us should evolve. To apply this notion to our hand fling gesture and its discourse managing forget it use, hand fling may communicate the signaler's attitude on how a piece of information, phi, that has already been proffered by the recipient should be handled. Phi should be rejected rather than being added to the common ground. This is in line with the treatment of hand fling as similar to Bressum and Mueller's 2014 and 2017 holding away gestures, which are categorized as refusing and rejecting information. Note that this discourse managing information itself will, of course, be added to the common ground, e.g. in the shape of the proposition the signaler wants the recipient to withdraw the information that the recipient had proffered. The hand fling with a forget it meaning thus has a similar discursive effect to the expression of denial of a salient proposition. thus preventing the targeted proposition phi from being added to the common ground. We can embed this in a discourse model as in given in 1. Using a notion from Rep 2013 for the sake of concreteness. Compare Farkas and Bruce's 2010 table for a discourse model that would also permit a formal rendering of the contribution that handfling makes to the discourse situation. See also Romero and Hahn 2004 for related research. Example 1 incorporates the idea that a proposition, and thus a piece of information, phi is introduced as part of the statement in 1i, the removal of which the signaler prompts in 1ii. Compare Bresson et al.'s 2017 description of the holding away gestures as a means to reject topics of talk, to stop arguments, beliefs, or ideas from intruding into the realm of shared conversation. Discourse Model Example 1. Discourse conditions for utterance un containing handfling. A preceding utterance un-1 of the recipient c has communicated that the proposition phi should be added to the common ground. The signaler c, who utters un, prompts the recipient c to remove phi from the discourse between the recipient c and signaler c. We can now illustrate handfling at work in a concrete example. 2/3, inspired by a naturalistic example found in The Fifth Child, 1988, by Doris Lessing, and its official German translation by Eva Schonfeld. Here, handfling occurs as a speech accompanying gesture, rather than a standalone gesture. We propose that following analysis, Robin's utterance in 2a triggers an inference, presumably at the level of conversational implicature, to phi, we cannot manage. Alex's use of the handfling gesture targets that inference. Handfling anaphorically takes phi as its propositional argument, and thereby rejects phi, in line with 1ii. This strengthens Alex's own assertion of p, we can manage. Discourse example number 2. A. Robin first says, our visitors are arriving tomorrow, and the house is a mess. B. Alex then responds, we can manage, who performs a handfling while they say the word manage. Such an analysis of example 2 is corroborated by the analogous facts from German. Consider the German translation in 3. In German, it is natural to add the discourse particle schon. Discourse example number 3. A. Robin first says, our visitors are arriving tomorrow, and the house is a mess. B. Alex then responds in German, das waschen wir schon, while they perform a handfling gesture at the last word. Egg, 2012, discusses an example similar to 3, though not containing a gesture, and argues for an analysis that can be rendered as in 4. Robin's utterance in 3a communicates simplified, Q equals the house is a mess, 4b. In 3b, Alex asserts the proposition P equals we will manage, 4c, and adds the particle schon, which contributes the meaning inference in 4a, as applied to 4b through c in 4d. See Grosz 2021 for recent discussion of whether the not at issue contribution of German discourse particles 4a over 4d is best modeled as a presupposition or designated use conditional meaning. Importantly, Alex's retort to Robin's statement serves to cancel a defeasible entailment, i.e., an entailment that arises in normal circumstances, and schon, with the semantics in 4a, highlights his cancellation, as spelled out in 4d. It is this defeasibly entailed proposition, phi is not p, that handfling targets in 2b and 3b. Discourse model example 4. A. Schon with arguments p and q suggests that both p and q hold, and according to the common ground, q defeasibly entails not p, as simplified from Egg 2012. 4b. Q is the house is a mess, asserted by Robin. 4c. P is we will manage, asserted by Alex. And 4d. Schon with arguments p and q suggests the house is a mess, q, defeasibly entails we cannot manage, not p, but both p, we will manage, and q, the house is a mess, hold. Therefore, the defeasible entailment from q to not p is cancelled. It is worth noting that the handfling gesture and the particle schon seem to reinforce one another in 3, as both of them serve to reject the salient inference, phi is not p, is we cannot manage. This behavior is expected, given that both contributions may qualify as use conditional in nature, and it is a hallmark property of use conditional meanings that they can be reinforced by repetition, such as Potts 2007, repeatability property of expressive content. Having seen examples of the hand fling and its discourse-managing forget-it reading, 2b and 3b, we now return to the question of how this may relate to the great ape meaning move away in Section 4. Section 4. Spelling out a semantic core of hand fling. The gestures of non-human great apes that have been described in the literature as of now, as in Hobater and Byrne 2014, are universally directive in the spirit of Seal 1975, i.e., communicative acts by which the signaler prompts the recipient to perform some action or another. We can thus apply an established formalism for imperatives in human language to flesh out the meaning of hand fling in its move-away reading. For concreteness' sake, we use Porter's 2007 formalism in 5. See Kaufman 2012, among many others, for alternative approaches to imperatives. For a reader unfamiliar with formal semantic notation, 5 expresses that the meaning of hand fling in its move-away reading corresponds to the description of a property that holds of individual x, by virtue of the lambda notion lambda x. Specifically, this is a property of x removing physical closeness from x and the signaler in the context C in a situation or world W, as encoded in the text that follows the full stop in the second line of 5. The part between colon and full stop, x equals the recipient C, is a presupposition that is only met if the denoted property holds of the recipient in context C. This encodes the recipient orientation of directives, such as imperatives. In Portner's system, a directive of the type in 5 is communicated by a signaler with the intention and the denoted property to the recipient's to-do list, a contextually given set of properties by which the recipient is committed to realize of themselves. In the case at hand, 5 amounts to a prompt for reducing physical closeness between the recipient and the signaler, thus increasing distance between them. Bold type is added to facilitate comparison between 5 and 6. Expression 5. Hand fling, in the move-away sense, within context C, assignment G, and world W, denotes a lambda expression. Specifically, it denotes the set of individuals, x, such that x is the intended recipient in context C, and x removes physical closeness from both x and the signaler in world W. At first encounter, 5 may seem like a roundabout way of expressing move away, but our aim is to see how this meaning could be mapped transparently onto a discourse-managing meaning, such as forget it. This mapping can be done by switching physical closeness with information, as shown in 6. The change from manipulating something physical in 5 to abstract information in 6 is reminiscent of the conduit metaphor that was applied to human gestures by McNeil, 1992, based on Reddy, 1979, which argues that the gestural manipulation of virtual objects can be transferred to an analogous manipulation of abstract information. Expression 6. Hand fling, in the forget it sense, within the context C, assignment G, and world W, denotes a lambda expression. Specifically, it signifies the set of individuals, x, such that x is a recipient in context C, and x removes information from both x and the signaler in world W. We can make the parallels between 5 and 6 even more explicit by abstracting over the theme argument and specifying its ontological type, physical closeness versus information, in the donation of the gesture. Such a restatement of 5 and 6 is given in 7 and 8, respectively. Here, the gesture combines with a variable I, which amounts to a contextually salient object that either classifies as physical closeness, 7, or as a piece of information, 8. In the formal semantics, the value of I, i.e. the contextually salient object for which it stands in, is provided by a contextual assignment function, G, in line with standard procedure. Expression 7. Hand fling in the move-away sense, with index I, within the context of C, assignment G, and world W, represents a lambda expression. Here, it indicates that X is the recipient in context C, and physical closeness, as determined by G of I, is removed by X from both X and the signaler in world W. Expression 8. Hand fling in the forget it sense, with index I, within the context of C, assignment G, and world W, similarly denotes a lambda expression. It specifies that X is the recipient in context C, and information, as determined by G of I, is removed by X from both X and the signaler in world W. With regards to the universals debate as outlined in Section 1, we can now reason as follows. First, we propose that humans may share a set of universal gestures with chimpanzees and other great apes. This has previously been shown for 1 to 2-year-old human infants by Kurskin et al. 2019. Our experiments in Henderson et al. 2022 extend this inquiry to adult humans. Second, We have argued that abstract discourse-managing gesture meanings in 6 and 7 are transparently derived from physical gesture meanings that communicate about the external world, given in 5 and 7, based on a shared semantic core meaning. Here, X removes GI from X and signaler C. As a consequence, the mapping from shared grade ape gestures to corresponding discourse-managing meanings should arise independently across cultures, which would provide a new piece to solving the puzzle of where gestural universals come from. Section 5. Broader consequences. On a big picture level, we propose that the meanings of shared grade ape gestures may more broadly constitute primary building blocks of gestural meanings in humans. While these building blocks may be understood in a physical sense, such as remove yourself and move away, we proposed in Section 4 they can trickle down into the discourse-managing gestures of adult humans by virtue of a semi-predictable mapping, where remove yourself becomes remove the undesirable information you have pro-offered, i.e., forget it. If supported, this hypothesis would allow us to identify the origin of a subset of discourse-managing human gestures and shared grade ape gestures. Returning to Hobater and Byrne, 2014, with this goal in mind, Table 1 illustrates attested ape meanings. If we take the meanings in Table 1 to form the basis of universal meanings in humans, we observe that some of them are negative/discouraging, such as the meaning move away, which is associated with the hand fling gesture, while others are positive/encouraging, such as the meaning move closer. Such notions of discouragement and encouragement may thus form the basis of universal gestural meanings. In the first instance, the universal meanings shared between humans and great apes will be physical. Subsequently, discourse-managing uses will derive from some of these physical gesture uses, though not necessarily all of them. To put this conjecture to the test, we can look at the beckon gesture, which in chimpanzees is strongly associated with the move closer meaning. In the same way in which move away may map to rejection of information, we would expect that move closer maps to acceptance/solicitation of information. In the second experimental study discussed in Section 2, we also presented human participants with a forced choice task involving 4 answer options for possible meanings of the beckon gesture as performed in Figure 2. The majority of participants chose the answer option, tell me more, 47%, or tell me about it, 35%, with only 18% of participants choosing one of the 2 distractors, thus offering support for the suggestion that beckon may qualify as a positive counterpart of hand fling in discourse management as well. Section 6. Summary and conclusion. In this paper, we examine the idea that humans may share certain gestures with other great apes, such as chimpanzees, including the gestural form hand fling, with an abstract gestural meaning that amounts to move away in Section 2. As humans are now restricted to communicating about the physical external world, we propose that the abstract gestural meaning of hand fling can be mapped onto the management of information in the discourse by virtue of a simple change in the meaning of the gesture, Section 4. As proof of concept, we fleshed out a concrete application of this analysis to discourse situations in humans, Section 3. We concluded with a brief exploration of the broader consequences, Section 5. The central hypothesis generated in this paper amounts to the idea that parts of the meanings of shared grade ape gestures, such as move away, may be contained in those of the discourse-managing gestures of adult humans, such as forget it. We consider this hypothesis to form the basis for future hypothesis testing in line with Henderson et al. 2022. And finally, acknowledgements. The authors are very grateful for useful feedback and input from Felipe Schenkler, the audiences at the LIN-GUAE seminar, the Linguistic Circle at the University of Edinburgh, and the LALP Lab seminar at NTNU. This research was partially supported by funding from the Faculty of Humanities Career Development Grant at the University of Oslo. Mathew Henderson, Kirsty Graham, and Catherine Hobater received research funding from the European Union's 8th Framework Program, Horizon 2020, under Grant Agreement number 802719. Thank you so much for listening. Once again, links to the original and full paper can be found in the description below or on the Wild Mind Lab's website at www.wildminds.ac.uk. Please feel free to reach out and contact any of us if you have any specific questions or comments. We love to hear from you. This is Mathew Henderson. Thank you again for your time, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.